It's March 2017 and it is ignition lock month here at Mercedessource. Let me tell you why. Just recently, I mean this was just 3 weeks ago, we found out that the 190E and the early 124 ignition lock assembly is no longer going to be made. Now this is not the first time we've gotten word that one of the ignition lock assemblies is going out of production. You know, you can't get some of those early ones from the 1970s. Some of the tumbler assemblies, like for the W116 and the R107, no longer made. I'm telling you, no longer made. So what are you going to do? You know, if we drive these old Mercedes a lot, and one of the things that we get from driving them a lot is worn out keys and worn out steering locks. So if you have one of these old cars, I'm going to admonish you, particularly if this is a car that you're going to keep, you plan to keep, you know, for another 5 or 10 years, that you go ahead and purchase a steering lock and an ignition tumbler and key assembly while they're still available. You say, well, Ken, I don't want to spend that kind of money. Well, let me give you a little hint. If you were to buy this right now and you didn't ever use it, and 5 years from now it goes out of production, you could double your money. So it's probably a much better investment than keeping some cash in a savings account at your local bank, okay? But what I want to do is make sure you're aware of this. It's going to happen more. You know, I dread the day when they don't make the steering lock anymore for the W123 chassis. Or maybe the tumbler and key assembly is no longer available. Can you imagine? What are you going to do? You're going to have to run around and find a used one. But what we found over the last 5 years, that some of the parts that are being manufactured, even the quote-unquote OE parts, when it comes to steering locks and ignition tumblers, there's little problems with them. And what we have to do here at Mercedessource, when we get a steering lock in, or we get a bunch of tumbler assemblies, now these are all tumbler assemblies right here. For the W123 and the early 126, look at that, all of these today, we have to take each one out of the box, we have to inspect them for alignment, and then we lube them, because almost all of this, the steering locks, the tumblers, none of them come adequately lubricated from the factory. If you've ever had a problem of getting one of these and having a lockup on you, can't get it installed right in your car, I know the feeling, I know the pain. So what we do here is every one of these we check. And you can see here now we're not only lubricating these with our curved tip syringe, very carefully lubricating around the edges and down in all the areas that move. We even have some problems with these getting sticky, so we have to put the key in, turn the key, pull the key back out, put the key back in, turn it. We keep working it until we're sure there's no notchiness in the tumblers and that everything is moving smoothly. And when we assemble the locks and we put the tumbler and key assembly inside the lock, we also test it. And we'll work the key maybe a dozen times. So if you purchase one of these and it maybe has some scratches on it, don't think that it's used. Just understand that it has been thoroughly tested, so when you get it, it's going to work in your car. Because if you don't do that, I just can't imagine some poor guy. We've had a number of people email, say, I got this tumbler, I got this lock, and they're all locked up, and I can't turn the key. Well, guess what? The only way you can get these apart is to cut them apart. This one we had to cut the cap off, and even after we cut the cap off, it's no good. We have to throw it away. There's something wrong inside the latching mechanism that's causing the key to jam, and when the key jams, you all know what happens. You can't go anywhere, you can't start the car, you can't move the car in some of these models. So this is kind of a big problem, and that's why we want to make sure that every one of these that goes out of here works. We found just recently that if you're messing around with the key on a new lock assembly and you do not have the electrical switch on the back, because the electrical switch lines up that center shaft could twist to the side, and you can see here we're working it back and forth, but we're doing it with the electrical switch installed. And that's going to give us a real good feel. Okay, that's really working well. We can tell that the key feels good. We've got it adequately lubricated. We have to take some of these we have to literally disassemble the guts, go in there, clean off some of the burrs, and lubricate this lock assembly completely inside, and then reinstall it and put the matching tumbler in and test it. This is one of the reasons why almost all the steering lock assemblies we sell, we do not sell them without our tumblers and key assemblies installed, because we know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to buy this from us. They're going to go out and buy some, tumbler off of eBay or someplace. They're going to stick it in. It's going to lock up. And of course, who's going to have to deal with the problem? So that's why we don't sell steering locks. They come assembled for you to prevent a big headache and a lot of problems. So you can see now we're actually telling people that if they do get a steering lock assembly and a tumbler from us that does not include the switch, we're going to warn people to actually put the switch on before you ever turn the key. Now look what I've done here. Just so this customer cannot turn the key until he reads the instructions. See that? I've got a zip tie so the key can't be turned. And when the customer gets this, they're going to say, well, why can't I turn the key? Because I'm going to put a note right in there that says, do not turn the key on the new steering lock until you install the electrical switch on the back side. Then it's okay to turn the key. Because once again, if that switch is not on there and you start, everybody kind of wants to play. I don't know what the big deal is. It's like people want to play with their keys, play with their locks before they install them. And what will happen is you'll start turning that back and forth, and this center shaft will cock to the side and the key will lock up. And if the cap's on, the black cap is on, you cannot fix this unless you cut the black cap off. So what we do is we do a lot of testing here without the cap on. You can see here we're working these keys back and forth in the steering lock without the cap on, because we want to make sure everything's right before we snap that cap on. And you should do the same thing when you're installing one of these, that you make sure everything's working properly. Make sure the switch is on the back. Before you snap the cap or screw the cap on, just put the tumbler assembly in and work it. But I'm telling you, if there isn't a good example out there of lack of lubrication and what it can cause, I don't think there's anything better than what I'm seeing from these steering locks and tumbler assemblies coming from the manufacturers today, because there's literally almost no lubrication inside. I know some of the steering locks I get have a big gob of grease right down on this end. And that's not where all the movement is. The movement mechanism is down in here, and that's why we're taking these apart right here in our shop and thoroughly lubricating them before we send them out. So I have the warning, okay? I have that warning. It may sound like I'm trying to scare you. In a way I might be, because really, I don't think there's any more frustrating problem than having one of these cars that you're somewhere and you can't turn the key to get it started. And like I say, on some models from 1990 to 95, you can't move the car. You can't get it out of park unless you can turn the key. So you end up having a situation where if you're in a parking spot, you can't even move it to get it on a tow truck. So during the month of March, we're going to put all our steering locks and ignition tumbler assemblies on sale. I have also developed 2 different types of service kits, which have the tools and the grease for you to go in and lubricate these assemblies yourself. If you have a car that you think, well, I think everything feels okay, the key's not too badly worn and the lock's still working, and you don't know it hasn't been lubricated in the last 5 years, you need to go in there and lubricate. And you need to take it apart to lubricate it properly with a special grease that we include in this curved tip syringe. Because you just don't want to squirt some Lockies in there. That's not going to solve the problem. You need to remove the tumbler and thoroughly lubricate it, as I point out in my instructions. And these service kits, by the way, there's one that's for the early screw type caps, and there's one that I have for the later snap caps. Each one of these kits comes with complete detailed instructions on how to use it, and even work on some problem tumblers that are stuck or not cooperating when you go to install them. So if you're watching this video now in March of 2017, go ahead and go to my website. I'll put a link below to all the sale items that we're going to currently run from now till the end of the March. related to steering locks and ignition key assemblies. So if you have any twitchiness, any notchiness, any stickiness, I'm going to warn you, take care of it now or you'll be sorry.